So, bonjour. Today we're going to speak about Passé Composé. Whenever you speak about past actions, you want to say, for example, what you did yesterday, you will need in French to use Passé Composé. This is the tense, and it is formed with two verbs, avoir and être. Maybe it reminds us of present perfect, but in English, present perfect is always built with the verb have. It's avoir in French, but in French we also form some verbs and in some cases with the verb être, which is to be. You must see my presentation on the screen. So le passé composé. If someone asked you what you did yesterday, you will need passé composé. How do we build passé composé? We use auxiliary verb, as I said already, avoir or être, and the past participle of the verb of the sentence. So if we have the verb manger, which is to eat, I have eaten or I ate. In French, it will be j'ai mangé. So, tu as fini, you finished. Il a vendu, he sold. So, what's happening? How do we form participles, which is important? When we have regular verbs, finishing, ending in er, parler, it simply becomes parler. We have e with accent aigu. And manger will become manger. And they will be pronounced the same. Infinitive parler is pronounced as a participle parler, but they are written in a different way. The verbs in ir, finir, choisir will become fini, choisi without r. And verbs like vendre will become vendu, entendre, entendu. You have to remember that we have irregular verbs, and irregular verbs form their participles in a different way, and we have to memorize them. So the irregulars, for example, are the verb avoir as well, which becomes eu, être, été, faire, fait, prendre, pris, voir, vu. And of course, you need to know as soon as you start using the verbs, you have to know what the participle is, if they are, especially if they are irregular. The auxiliary verb avoir, which we also need to build passé composé, will be conjugated according to the person. So it will be j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on a, nous avons, vous avez, ils, elles ont. Elles ont. Quick recall. Hier, nous avons mangé au restaurant et ils ont fini leur travail. What will be the forms of the verb avoir? Avons in the first person plural, nous, we. Ils ont, they have in the third person plural. So while 95% of verbs use avoir, a small group of verbs use the verb être. And they are usually the verbs of movement and the verbs of change of state. So when I say I went somewhere, I will say je suis allé and not j'ai allé. She fell will be elle est tombée and not elle a tombé. And this, the participle will also follow the gender of the So for the verbs, in order to remember the verbs that are used with the auxiliary verb être, we remember this Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump. Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump. These are the verbs whose initial letter represent. This is a phrase, and every word, every initial letter of the words in this phrase represent a verb. So, for example, doctor, doctor, dr will be devenir, revenir. And then we have other verbs like monter, sortir, partir, venir, arriver, naître, descendre. So these verbs are used with the verb être. For example, il est allé. He went, or he has gone. We have to remember that when we use verb être, the past participle must agree with the subject in gender. So if we have feminine like elle, the participle will be aller, and we will have a second a because of the feminine. When it is masculine, il est allé, we have only one e with accent grave, and when we have plural, especially for feminine, we will have both e and s. So this is important. In the sentence, Marie a mangé une pomme, is the agreement on manger correct? Since we have the verb avoir here and we don't use être in the passé composé, we don't have to use a second e, so this is wrong. The phrase should be with one e. Reflexive verbs. This is interesting. Reflexive verbs like se laver, to wash myself, se réveiller, to wake up, always use être in the passé composé. Je me suis réveillée à 8 heures. I woke up at 8 o'clock. So mainly we use avoir for the majority of verbs, but we use être for the verbs of motion and transition and for all reflexive verbs. Let's verify the past participles. Faire will become fait, and it will be used with avoir. Prendre, take, will become pris and will be used with avoir. Venir, venu. Sortir, sorti. Both venir and sortir will be used with être. So imagine talking about your weekend. What will you say in French? J'ai passé un super week-end. Je suis allée au parc samedi. Je me suis bien amusée dimanche. I have spent a wonderful weekend. I went to the park on Saturday. Entertained on Sunday. Tu aurais pu dire, if you talked about your weekend, maybe you would say, je regardais un film. I saw a film. Je suis allée à la mer. I went to the seaside. Je me suis amusée. And by the way, which is very important, a very important comment, passé composé in French replaced the passé simple in spoken French hundreds of years ago, because there is also this form passé simple, and you can find it in the books, in some stories, but normally for the past actions, to describe past actions, we use passé composé in French. Bonne chance avec le français and avec le passé composé.